Now it says live.
But the comments were reacting to us, were they not?
I don't know what's going on. We got 40 people in here. Oh my God. I've only done this once before. Now we're live.
Now we're live.
And we got 44 people in here waiting patiently.
Wow.
All right. I apologize, folks. I did a rookie mistake after doing this for 2 years. We just did half the show. And only now that I realized that we weren't live.
Well, it's taping though, right? They can always rewatch it, right? So.
Oh, they can't rewatch it because it wasn't recording. But we still managed to still have 41 people hang in there.
That's dedication for you. They hung out almost a half hour. Wow.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous. I apologize, everyone. We are live now, I swear. And now we're getting the comments. CK is like, holy shit. Yeah, I'm not drinking beer either. I swear to God, this is Tim Hortons coffee. All righty. Okay. So, I don't know. We got up to number 3.
We're up to number 3.
We got up to number 3. Okay, so let's rewind here. So, all right. So we started by going around and asking everyone what got them into Aerosmith. And sorry, guys, we're gonna have to redo this. Oh dear Lord. So
someone says Hack should start drinking now.
Yeah, I should start drinking. Yeah, somebody wheel me up the scotch. Okay. All right, Martin. Gotcha.
Okay, so we are starting again. Is that the idea?
We got to start again. We weren't live.
Yes.
That's all right. That's all right. That's fine. Okay, so what got me in Aerosmith? I would say that, back then at 10 years old, at 11 years old, we were already kind of getting into music. So I can't remember whether we were on the ball enough as my friends and my cousins and all that to have gotten the first one as a new release. But I definitely distinctly remember anticipating Get Your Wings as a new release. So I would have been 11 years old. So we were on board by the time of Get Your Wings, but I'm not sure if we were on board right at the beginning. But that was about as good as, once Get Your Wings happened, that was about as good as all kind of 70s rock went for 11-year-old at that point. I mean, we didn't even have the first Ted Nugent album at that point, right?
Yeah.
And Kiss was just coming out, and then there was all the UK stuff as well. But literally, this would have been one of the ground zero kind of records, Get Your Wings, for us as kids.
Pete, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I got into them a little bit late. Back when I was like, a kid growing up and getting into heavy music, most of the people that I knew, you were either into the American bands like Aerosmith and Van Halen and Ted Nugent and so on and so forth, or you're into the British bands like, Sabbath and Zeppelin and Purple and, Maiden and Judas Priest and all that kind of stuff. So while I was well aware of Aerosmith and liked a bunch of their songs, I was never like a go out and buy Aerosmith records and, go see the band live until later on. Although I did see them on the 84 reunion tour, but that was, I didn't really start getting into them heavy until probably like the early 90s, when Ironic was the same time where they were such a massive success doing a lot of non-heavy stuff, right? So that's when I really started to investigate, the back catalog and go and buy all this stuff. So I was kind of a late convert, but better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, it was for me. Getting in Aerosmith happened at the same time as I got into heavy guitar, because one of the first heavy guitar bands I heard was Aerosmith. My back in the day, my uncle, who's 6 years older than me, is like an older brother with the Trans Am, and he had the 8-track tapes, and he would throw in these bands. And for the first time, I'm hearing heavy guitar. I'm hearing Heart. I'm hearing, Nazareth. And then he threw in Aerosmith. And it's like, so my introduction to Aerosmith was my introduction to heavy guitar. which is still to this day. I mean, that's I still love it, and that's sort of, even though I'm an '80s kid, I'm more of a '70s kid, because that's the guitar sound that I like. Is and I play, and everyone says, man, you sound like you're 10 years older than you are, because that's what really got infused into my being, so to speak, is that whole '70s bluesy rock guitar playing. So I always love that stuff. So for folks, if you're just tuning in and you're wondering what the hell happened, Bozo over here forgot to hit the go live button. So you haven't missed anything. We're literally starting the show, so you haven't missed anything. So, all right. So that being said, we're gonna start with Martin. We're gonna go number 5, and we'll start from there.
Okay. So my number 5 of the greatest Aerosmith albums is Get Your Wings, 1974. I thought this was a big improvement over the debut. For 1974, the Jack Douglas production on this is exquisite. It sounds really, really good. My favorite songs, oddly enough, are the 2 mellowest songs on here. Seasons of Wither as a good, dark, moody ballad. Spaced is more of like an up-tempo, atmospheric space rock ballad almost. But I thought Lord of the Thighs is quite a complicated hard rocker. So is SOS Too Bad. Same Old Song and Dance is a little kind of retro, as is their, heavy cover of Train Kept a Rollin'. But Pandora's Box and Woman of the World always reminded me a little bit of Ted Nugent's debut album from 1975, with that good party hard rockin' thing that the American bands were known for more than the British bands, who had more of like a doomy or classical base to what they were doing. And the American bands had a little more boogie rock and blues to what they were doing, and a little bit of, I mean, the whole thing that Kiss is known for, that kind of melodic hard rock, pre-hair metal sort of thing. I think you get a little bit of that in a song like Woman of the World, I think. So, looking at this with only 8 tracks on it, there's really no filler. It's sequenced really well. And again, big improvement over the debut. So Get Your Wings, my number 5.
Yeah, Jack Douglas with them on those early records was magic. Absolute magic. All those records with Jack Douglas just sound fantastic. Sound really, really good. What about yourself? What do you got for number 5, Pete?
All right, my number 5, I'm going to go with them at the height of the cocaine years. It's a white album cover, so it's kind of apropos there. Draw the Line.
Draw the Line, yes.
Yeah, exactly, or lines, it should probably say. But I mean, it's a good, heavy album. I think it holds up really well. I remember, like, back in the day when this album came out, folks were kind of like, oh, Aerosmith's starting to slip, but I don't know. I listen to this today and I hear a good, heavy band with just having a good time, maybe too much of a good time, but probably, at each other's throats and what have you. But it didn't really hurt the creative process. I love the title track. I Want to Know Why is really good, catchy rocker. Critical Mass is a good, heavy blues rocker. I could do without the harmonica, but that's just me. Get It Up, really heavy. Almost to the point of almost like a heavy, funky metal type of track, because there was a lot of kind of funky stuff going on in this album. Kings and Queens is epic. One of my favorite songs from them of all time. The Hand That Feeds, good hard rocker. Cypher Sore Eyes, again, it's got that heavy funk thing going. And then I like the blues tune, Milk Cow Blues. It's really gritty and kind of raw. And I don't know. I like this album. I think it holds up really well. And I listen to it quite often. I think it's got a lot of oomph to it, So that's my number 5.
Yeah, we on the previous broadcast that wasn't aired, I was talking about the sort of the eras of Aerosmith, where the 70s era, and then let's just call it this commercial era, where we're really overproducing everything and trying to get everything on the radio. And there was one diamond in the rough in that era for me, and that was the Pump album. Probably part of why I like Pump is the timing. It came out in '89, did extremely well, 7 million copies sold in the US and Canada. So, but it's got enough gritty rock to it. Young Lust, F.I.N.E. Fine. Janie's Got a Gun. Again, I think there's way too much going on in that record. It would have probably done better if it was sort of brought down a little bit in some of the effects. Bruce Fairbairn production. So, there's a lot of stuff going on. The album had, the big hits on it. Had Janie, had Love in an Elevator, the other, Other Side, all that. But I think the album probably would have sounded a lot better if it was just more stripped down. At this point, and a lot of their records in that period and onward sort of, I think, suffered from, I'd call it the Def Leppard disease, which is like, let's try to make this as radio friendly as possible, and let's try to get on the radio. And the song did suffer a little bit from that. I mean, they started using drum samples and things like that. I just think the record it still has good enough songs on it that, if you strip down Young Lust, F.I.N.E. Fine, those could have been on an earlier album. If those were a Jack Douglas production, those, they would have kicked. Not that they don't kick now, but I think they would have sounded a little bit better. I think the album is just a little bit overdone. But that being said, it still made my top 5. So, yeah, my top 5 is Pump. Top 5. My number 5 is Pump. So there you go.
It takes up every slot in the top 5. You love it so much.
It's every record.
Pump looks like it. That's what the guys look like. That I think this thing's kind of a Pump era thing that we've got here. This big cardboard thing. This is a really good album. I mean, it almost made my list, and I think most Aerosmith fans, when you give them a break and go into the 80s, think this is a pretty good album. But I'm just looking at it and like The Other Side, what a great swaggering rocker on here. Don't Get Mad, Get Even, Voodoo Medicine Man, Monkey on My Back. There's a lot of good stuff on here. The one thing I think about this record is that it is overproduced. Like it's got too much stuff going on, but it's also noisy and brash at the same time, which you really get from Young Lust right off the bat. And I think people kind of, spread their thought of that song onto the whole album, because I think everybody kind of thought it was a little more lively than Permanent Vacation, which I really like as well. I think that one sounds a little easier on the ears. But there's a lot of great songs on here. You're right. I mean, it is a good choice for an album. My number 4, right? I'm on 4 here. Okay, 4 for me would be "Rockin' a Hard Place," 1982. Always loved this album when it came out. Despite Joe Perry and Brad Whitford being replaced by Rick Dufay and Jimmy Crespo. It doesn't really seem to make much of a difference. It sounds just like the mix of the same boxes getting ticked off as Draw the Line or Get Your Wings or Rocks. I really love Joni's Butterfly on here. I think the production is really good on it, but that one's got those beautiful acoustic guitars and I think tablas, right? That kind of drum effect, right? Yeah. Bolivian Ragamuffin, Bitches Brew, Lightning Strikes. Our band played Lightning Strikes. Jailbait, which is their kind of OTT fast one that's a little bit like Young Lust on this album. So it's just got a good mix of those standard gritty Aerosmith songs. To my mind, this even has a little more life to it, or hopefulness or enthusiasm than even Draw the Line, I think, in certain ways. I always had time for this album. Never didn't like it, even though they were kind of down and out at the time. The Lightning Strikes video, I remember, is really kind of dark and not very good.
Yeah, Steven looks pretty rough in that video.
Yeah. But no, this is a good solid album. So there's my number 4.
Yeah, that's I really that Lightning Strikes, I think, is one of their better songs too. Yeah.
I mean, the important thing is it still sounds like an Aerosmith album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember you talk about how rough Steven Tyler was looking. I interviewed Barry Goudreau from X of Boston and at the time of Orion the Hunter. And he was telling me a story about how when they were out on tour with Aerosmith, that when they first got back together, and he was talking about a specific show where literally Aerosmith were late to show up to the arena. And it was like a half hour, 45 minutes after they were supposed to go on. The limo shows up. 2 guys get out. They drag Steven Tyler out of the limo. He can't even walk. He's like unconscious. His feet are dragging on the ground. They literally run him up to the stage, throw him out on the stage, and somehow he manages to stand up and start singing. And then halfway through the gig, he collapses and falls into the audience. They end the show, and Barry and the rest of the guys on Orion the Hunter the next day are like, geez, do we even have a tour? today, you know, whatever. And the next day they show up to the next arena, the next town, and the guys in Aerosmith act like nothing happened. Apparently, like I think it was Tom Hamilton punched Steven in the face after he fell, but it's like the guys like forgot all about it. So that's how strung out they still were at the time.
Oh,
you know, like, they didn't even remember that it happened the night before. And meanwhile, the opening band was kind of like, is this tour like going to be canceled after last night? Who knows, right?
The story I was told by, I'm trying to rack my brain who it is, but somebody who was on tour with Aerosmith said that Joey Kramer would get handed a towel and it was drenched in amyl nitrate, and he'd rub it all over his face and throw the towel back aside and keep playing. So
I wouldn't doubt it, Martin. I wouldn't doubt it.
It's crazy.
All right. So my number 4 is going to be Night in the Ruts. Again, part of those cocaine years. So, you know, like my previous choice, Draw the Line, I think this is a really great album. It's got plenty of swagger and piss and vinegar and attitude, and that's what I love about the early Aerosmith. And you know, another perfect example of, you know, no matter how much they hated each other and how much drugs they were doing, they still cranked out a really good album. No Surprise kicks off the album. Great opener. Chiquita is such a killer song. I love the cover of Remember, you know, walking in the sand. So good, so memorable. One of those covers that are so successful, you kind of forget. You know, you often talk about like those great covers from the 70s. That's one of them. I always forget about that. You got Cheesecake, which is sleazy and bluesy with all that slide guitar. It's like kind of like the precursor to Cinderella. I mean, you can't tell me Cinderella wasn't listening to these guys, right? It's just such a great song. We got, you know, Reefer Head Woman is another really good song. 3 Mile Smile, and perhaps my favorite song on the album. It's one of my favorite Aerosmith songs. Bone to Bone, Coney Island, Whitefish Boy. I mean, what a riff in that song. What a groove. It's just an absolutely incredible tune. And Think About It's great. And the Moody Ballad Mia is also a really, really good track. Really nice. So I don't know. I think top to bottom, start to finish, it's really, really strong. Really strong. Holds up very well.
Yeah, Night in the Ruts. I really dig that record. That is also my number 4. Came out in 79. Yeah, Joe leaves during the recording. So he did a bunch of work, but then he split, and Jimmy Crespo and Rick Dufay filled in his parts that were missing. But yeah, you mentioned Chiquita. I love the way that song starts. It's sort of all kind of splintered, and then slowly, you know, the instruments start to come together, and then the groove kicks in. That's a really cool song. That's one of my favorite Aerosmith songs. Actually.
Yeah, it's a great one.
No Surprise, cool. Steven sings about, you know, how the band got together and the whole history of the band, which is very cool. Reefer Head Woman, I love it when these guys do straight ahead blues. When they do, and you know, when they do it well, and Aerosmith is one of those bands that, you know, they can play, they can do some really good blues, and I mean, Steven's vocal on that too is insane. Mia, that's a lullaby. Apparently, I read that's a lullaby that he wrote for his daughter, which is very cool. Yeah, there's a lot of fighting going on when they recorded that. They were at war with Jack Douglas. He walked away. They ended up getting Gary Lyons to produce the record. That record took forever to get done because Steven just wanted nothing to do with it. He was too involved with his drug habit at the time. And but again, despite all of that, they still made a fantastic album. I love Night in the Ruts. I think it's a great record, definitely top to bottom. Lots of memorable songs on that for sure. Yeah, and it did well, platinum in the US and gold in Canada. So there you go.
Nice. All right. So my number 3 is Night in the Ruts. Love this record. I think it sounds amazing. It's odd to think that it is a Gary Lyons production because he's known more as a you know, party along with the band kind of guy, not a guy who's right into the board and the guts of the sound of things. So yeah, a lot of crazy stories of him with UFO. But it sounds like a nice, pristine, gorgeous Jack Douglas production. Probably, I would venture to say it's the second best sounding of all the records up until, you know, sounds and, you know, themes change in the 80s or whatever. But right up until probably Rockin' a Hard Place, I think is their best sounding record, maybe tied with Rocks, like I say. I agree, Pete. I love Remember Walking in the Sand. I think it's you know, that on paper might not have been that great, but it's a great sounding ballad. It's infectious with that nice chorus hook to it. My favorites are 3 Mile Smile and No Surprise, just as the sort of rock and roll-y, really accessible songs on it. But I think Chiquita, Bone to Bone, Cheesecake, there's a lot of complicated little weird things going on in the riffs and the transitions in these songs. I think they're great. Think About It, the Heavy Yardbirds cover on here as well. Just, yeah, solid start to finish. I think a lot of people not liking this album comes with the total grimness of the album art and having no logo and having the stuff spray painted on the on the rock and then just looking like that, right? I mean, it's a neat idea, and the title is funny and all that, but yeah, those pictures are just so grim. And it's funny, as you guys were talking, I'm looking all over the inner sleeve and the outer sleeve. There's 0 band credits, like song credits in terms of who plays on what on this record. These guys are not named on the album at all. So that's kind of interesting. There's all the usual, deep credits, but there's no credits at all for who the band is.
Wow.
Yeah. I was going to mention too with Chiquita with the intro. I mean, half the riff is just the guy raking on the guitar, but it just works. It's such an interesting riff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
It's almost like you give the guitar to a 3-year-old and he's just kind of banging away,
Yeah, and it does sort of a beat-in version on it too.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like because you were talking about complicated. Yeah, like that is a really interesting, way to do a tune. Yeah, very, very cool. All right, what do we got, Pete? Number 3.
All right, so I do want to repeat something we talked about in the first take of the show that everybody missed out on, and it really has a lot to do with that album as well. It's like, we were talking about how in the 70s you had all sorts of bands who were having all sorts of internal struggles, whether it's with each other, fighting, stealing each other's wives and women, or, alcohol addictions, drug addictions, all that kind of stuff. But yet so many of these bands, the Stones and Sabbath and Aerosmith, were still able to somehow keep it together to crank out and produce a really good album. And, Hack said it perfectly. It's like that would not happen today. Bands have those kind of troubles today. They're done. They break up. They don't release anything, whatever. But somehow in the 70s and even into the early 80s, these artists were able to make it work despite all that stuff going on. So, all kudos to them.
What I was saying was all the amount of, because it took them forever to finish that record. If that was today, they would have just been dropped off the label. I mean, they waited. Yeah,
labels have no patience anymore.
Yeah, it's like, okay, guys, the album has to be, meanwhile, like Steven, he didn't want to write any lyrics, he wanted nothing to do with it, So, and they still, like you say, they still cranked out an awesome record, right?
Yeah. All right, I guess now we're all caught up now. So now,
now this is all new now.
This is all new now, right? There we go. We're totally caught up. So everybody's hearing this for the first time. No kind of doing things from memory anymore.
No,
my number 3 is Get Your Wings, the second album. So, if we would have done this exercise like maybe a decade ago, this probably would have been lower and maybe not even in my top 5. But I think that this album, for me anyway, has really grown pretty special and has aged really, really well. And as much as I dig the debut, man, I think this is such an improvement over the debut. As solid as that one is, I think the real Aerosmith finally came out to play with this album. And, like Martin mentioned, same old song and dance. Fun song, but it gets better from there. Lord of the Thighs is terrific. Spaced is a really good, underrated song. Woman of the World, terrific. SOS Too Bad is a really good rocker. Totally dig that a lot. You got the fiery Train Kept Rolling, which, of course, has Hunter and Wagner on lead guitars, which nobody knew at the time, but now it's pretty common knowledge. Seasons of Wither, man, so moody, so melodic. And then Pandora's Box, another really, really good tune. I think there's so much variety on this album. It's kind of a darker album, but it's heavy. I mean, I love it. I listened to this probably more than the rest of the catalog in like recent years for whatever reason. So that's my number 3.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah, it is a great record, 1974. And platinum in Canada, 3 times platinum in the US, and that's also my number 3. So, yeah, Get Your Wings. Man, what an improvement from one record to the other. It's like it only, some bands take 3-4 records to find their groove. Those guys did it on the second album. Like they were Aerosmith on that record, and again, the production is amazing. I mean, Jack Douglas and those guys, they're just, Match made in heaven. Highlights for me: Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Thighs. Maybe that's where they got the no. Woman of the World is a great one as well. But for me, the star of that record is Seasons of Wither. Man, that's a freaking masterpiece. Absolutely love that song. It's why I like the production of that record and those early 70s records is there's no frills, straight up rock and roll. All you're hearing is the guitars, the bass, the drums. You don't have all this extraneous crap sort of taken away from that. You're hearing the heart and soul of the band. You're hearing a band. You're not hearing a bunch of other band plus that's why I really dig that record. And the cover of I gotta admit, I'm not the biggest fan of Train Kept the Roll. I'll say it right now. I'm not a biggest fan of it. They've done better songs than that. But same old song and dance too. Should mention that one. Actually my number 3 and my number 4 are kind of interchangeable, but I went with Get Your Wings for number 3. But absolutely great record. Fantastic.
And I think Tyler really found his true voice on this album too.
Did you let me that you mentioned that, I noticed that his voice is really different from the first. It's almost like he was a kid singing on the first one, but by the second one he already started to develop that deeper, that maybe that little bit of rasp, but now it's all rasp. But back then he was able to control it, and he had that and I'll mention this later on, but he had that incredible falsetto when he would go up high and he's sing that falsetto, and oh man, that falsetto back that he had back then, that makes the little hairs on the back of your head stand up. There's some, but I'll get into the falsetto thing because there's another stuff coming up that he does that just blows me away. But anyways, that's my number 3.
Cool. Yeah, just one thing I wanted to mention, Train Kept a Rollin' is, I guess everybody's kind of tired of that song, and it had been done, previously before Yardbirds and Johnny Burnett trio, right? But the fact of the matter is, when you cite those sales, I mean, that is actually the biggest hit on this whole album, right?
Yeah.
That and Same Old Song and Dance are really the only radio songs. So that's
what
made that record sell. So, all right. My number 2, I think, for any statement making that's been going on this show, there isn't going to be much. It was going to be pretty predictable which records we were all going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And and it's really cool, Hack, that you brought in Pump, because Pump is a good album, and I almost could have brought in Permanent Vacation as well. But I think the one statement I've kind of made and surprised myself on here is that Draw the Line isn't in my top 5. I'm pretty sure it would have been my number 6. But so that's your little spoiler alert here. My number 2 is Toys in the Attic. And I thought really good and hard about this, whether Draw the Line was going to come on and Get Your Wings was maybe going to drop off. And I started looking at this. This is a little bit of their Black Sabbath Paranoid in a way. Like, we're all kind of sick of a lot of these songs because this was such a big hit album. But you can't deny just the versatility and the funness to this whole thing, with super heavy song, Toys in the Attic, complicated modern metal song. Adam's Apple is like a heavy Rolling Stones swaggery sort of thing. Walk This Way, obviously, just a bona fide hit in like pioneering rap and that amazing riff and that drum beat. Big 10 Inch, kind of a jazzy thing, kind of a jokey tune. No More is also very Stonesy, Sweet Emotion with that iconic bass riff. Round and Round, kind of a Sabbathy one. You See Me Crying. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 9 songs on this, and they all just bring something different to the table. Just such a cool way that this whole album is sequenced and comes together, and they just do something absolutely different from whatever was on before on every single song on here. Massaging in some acoustic guitar, that little bit of jazz, the one ballad, the weirdness and the coolness that is Walk This Way. So just couldn't deny, not putting this pretty high on the list. So there you go, number 2.
Yeah, cool.
Yep. Everything that Martin just said. I mean, there was a time where I tried to convince myself that this might have been my favorite Aerosmith album. But that's not really the case. But like Martin said, it ranks very high. And if it wasn't for the other album in question, this probably would be number one. But I mean, there's some great stuff on here. Martin said it perfectly. I think for some of us, there's a little bit of an overplay factor on some of these tracks. But man, the title cut is so good. I love Round and Round. I mean, it's my favorite Aerosmith song of all time. It is so heavy. I almost wish they did more of that type of thing. Obviously, Black Sabbath being one of my favorite bands of all time. It's not surprising I would say that. But there's just some great stuff on here. No More, No More. Walk This Way is classic. Just, Sweet Emotion, obviously the big hit on the album. But yeah, I mean, it's great. I love the album cover. The whole thing, it just looks great, sounds great. But it's not quite that number one. Yeah. Pretty close, though.
And that album cover is illustrated by the same. How does it work? So it's Drew Struzan and I can't remember the gal's name, but she's involved in here as well. Anyways, it's the same consortium at Pacific Eye and Ear that did Welcome to My Nightmare and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. The whole illustrating theme of this.
Yeah. Looks just like it.
Yeah. So I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm going to be the contrarian here as far as the first number one. Okay, because my number two is Rocks. That's my number two. Platinum in Canada, 4 times platinum in the US. It's just a really good collection of songs. The album sounds great. Again, it's that whole Jack Douglas thing, no frills, straight up rock and roll. Highlights for me, I love Sick as a Dog, Licking a Promise, Nobody's Fault, which is the heaviest song on that record. It sounds really, and that's one of the records, because they did covers on many other albums, but there's no covers on that one. All the songs were written by the band, and Perry and Stevens share vocals on a track, and I'm trying to remember what track that was. Jesus, escapes me now. But there's a song that both of them are actually sharing vocals on.
Combination probably, right?
Yeah,
that's combination. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great record. I mean, it's almost, top to bottom. There's not a dud on there, and it has hits on it, but they're not super. I mean, what would be the hit on that? Licking a Promise, would that be the hit on?
No, Back in the
Saddle.
Saddle.
Back in the Saddle. Okay, yeah. That'd
Home
be the
Tonight
hit.
second.
But it's a really, really good collection of songs, and but it's not quite as good as my number one to me. All right. So I guess everybody's kind of figured out what my number one is. But all right, let's go to number ones now. What do you got for number one, Mark?
Okay, so my number one is Rocks. A lot of people rate this as one of the greatest albums of the 70s period, and most people, I mean, this usually wins the battle of the Aerosmith albums. I think the production is a huge step up from Toys in the Attic and Get Your Wings, even though both of those sounded good for the time. This sounds really good for 1976. And when we're having those discussions of dissing Led Zeppelin and stuff, I really think the big point, when we do put down Presence, is the fact that this thing just stomps all over Presence from a height of several miles. I mean, doing the same kind of music, right? It's just the young kids taking over. It's just so graphic how much better this is than Presence in every department. Even though it's making the exact same kind of music, right? Back in the Saddle's amazing. Last Child. Actually, you know what? Back in the Saddle and Last Child and Home Tonight would be my least favorite songs on the album. But Rats in the Cellar, as you mentioned, Hack, Nobody's Fault, probably the heaviest song on it, but Rats in the Cellar is really close, and then Round and Round is probably right up behind it, right? Combination is complicated, the way it just slides in and out of that riff. Really cool, dark, moody one. But my favorite Aerosmith song of all time is, I've often said this is the greatest song of all time, period, is Draw the Line. But a close favorite, second, would be Sick as a Dog. I think that's just gorgeous the way that thing is put together. It's like the greatest song the Rolling Stones never wrote. It's so Stonesy. Love it to death. And I love Nobody's Fault. Get the Lead Out's okay. Licking a Promise is also a super explosive, heavy one on here. It's just a band so dynamic and so turned on, and just doing everything right, and just showing up, showing up BTO and Ted Nugent and Kiss and, like I say, Led Zeppelin and even Deep Purple at the time. It literally felt like the most professional hard rock album of the day. So there you go.
Yeah, and they had an undeniable swagger that I think just really blossomed with this album. And as legendary as Led Zeppelin was at the time, you listen to Presence, which I like Presence, but then you listen to this and it's almost like no comparison. I mean, these guys were they were hitting on every single level, and top to bottom, this is just such a great album. Last Child is like one of my favorite songs by them. Rats in the Cellar is great combination. Sick as a Dog, Nobody's Fault. I mean, top to bottom, when you talk about like the perfect Aerosmith album, it's hard to deny this one. It really is. Just clicking on all cylinders, clicking all the boxes. It's heavy, it's melodic, it's got some funk to it. The groove is there. The production is great. It's just a fun, heavy album. That's my number one.
Well, take a wild guess what my number one is. My number one is yours. Your number two, Toys in the Attic. This for me is a friggin' one of the greatest records ever made. Absolutely love it. It was my introduction, which probably helps a lot, and probably one of the reasons why it is. I was, when I looked up the stats on this, I was real surprised. This was platinum in Canada, but it was 8 times platinum in the US. Yeah. Toys in the Attic, A Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion. I'm sure that helped a lot. But it was recorded in 75. This record, like all the previous records were songs that they sort of had in the can. They've been playing for years and years. This was the first record that they actually clean slate and wrote all new songs. And man, the songs on this are fantastic. Like the riffs are so sophisticated, like Adam's Apple. Like that is a sophisticated riff. Sweet Emotion, I know we're probably some of us tired of hearing it or walked it. Like those are just amazing riffs. Just really, really good riffs. The production, I love the production on this as well. And what's cool about this record is it has a lot of variety, right? You mean, yep. You've got like Uncle Salty, which is a song that nobody talks about, which is just a gorgeous song. The way it kind of opens up and gets all dreamy and stuff. I mean, that's like next level stuff right there. But for me, the absolute masterpiece on this record, and probably one of my favorite songs of all time, if not my favorite Aerosmith song of all time, You See Me Crying. That is the 70s encapsulated in one song. All lush and whatever. And his singing on that record, and I was talking about that falsetto. There's a point in that song where he goes into this falsetto. Oh my God. Like I get chills just thinking about him singing that. It just, one thing we haven't talked about is Steven Tyler, one of the greatest voices of rock. I mean, he's top 5 for me. Like back then, not so much, like everybody else gets old or whatever, but back then the guy had the most amazing voice, the tone, the range, the falsetto. Like the guy was he was off the charts. An incredible singer. And that song is killer. There's some fun, big, 10-inch record, it's kind of a jokey. That's the other thing I got to say about Steven Tyler. That guy's the master of a double entendre, man. He's like, he knows how to say the act and, surrounding parts of the act, like better than anybody else without saying it. He's amazing at that. What else did I got written down here? No more. Like there's not a dud on this. And Round is like the heaviest.
Love it.
It's the heaviest song they ever did, I think, is
yep.
Round.
I would agree.
It's crushing. And the riff is so much fun to play. It's just don, like just fantastic. It's great. It's got the variety. It's you got the jazzy 10-inch thing. You got the ballad. You've got the straight ahead rock and roll. It's just the perfect record. I mean, if somebody said to me, I don't know anything about Aerosmith. What would be what records should I listen to? I would give them Toys in the Attic, because you've got the whole range of that band in that one record, from the ballady stuff to the heavy stuff to the groove stuff to everything. It's all in that one album. Absolutely love it. Not just my favorite Aerosmith record, but probably one of my favorite records of all time.
And you mentioned You See Me Crying, and it makes me cry to think about how, the one big negative thing Aerosmith's going to be known for or remembered for is the big schlocky song doctor ballads of the 90s and the 2000s, right? And yet they were the absolute greatest writers of their own ballads.
Yeah, exactly.
With Home Tonight and You See Me Crying and Seasons of Wither, right?
Yeah.
On, I mean, they literally had. This is a band that someone just sort of shook them and said, you don't need song doctors. I mean, just please go back. I mean, maybe they lost it over the years and they lost the ability to write. And maybe when there was no drugs, it wasn't as good, the writing or whatever, creative. But the fact of the matter is they're going to be remembered for this horrible thing. Their reputation's kind of semi-ruined by all of that overproduced stuff and the big MTV ballads. Yet they should be remembered for being one of the greatest, writing consortiums of those kinds of songs.
Yeah, keep Diane Warren out of the room. Don't let her come in here and write a sap. Because their ballads, like you're saying, when they wrote them themselves, they were fantastic. All the stuff they did afterwards, it's like, again, it's that whole thing about, they're writing to get on the radio. They're writing, to for hits, and that just diluted their ability. I mean, yeah. But yeah, that's it. So any final comments? And while we're going around,
Geronimo riff. You got to explain the Geronimo riff.
Oh, okay.
Geronimo riff again. That's right.
Yeah, examples.
Well, okay. So the most literal examples you could possibly get are the intro to Black Sabbath, Rock and Roll Doctor on Technical Ecstasy. It literally sounds like cowboys and Indians music, right? So when you think of, Native American Indian music and those kind of melodies, that is what I consider like the Geronimo riff. And when someone who has a propensity towards that, and that would be like Tony Iommi quite often. And then the other one, when we were talking about this before, is the other literal one is the opening to Nazareth Alcatraz.
And I think that's a better one actually, because that totally sounds like.
But but can you remember the very beginning of Rock and Roll Doctor before it becomes a boogie tune? It's the same thing, right? But and then I've also often said you can actually hear it on and off on Def Leppard Pyromania, believe it or not. So yeah, you can almost sit there with some of these records with a little A/B switch and say Geronimo riff, not Geronimo riff, Geronimo riff. Just like the same way you could do that with when boogie was starting to be replaced by modern heavy metal sounds across Aerosmith songs and Kiss songs and Ted Nugent songs, right? So that's an interesting little thing too. Same kind of thing.
So we got a question here. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but anyways, this is from Jay Adams, Guitar Hack off topic. But what do you guys think about the lost song by Sabbath called Slapback? This was on YouTube. It was just leaked. I hear Tony's mad as hell. It was that it was released. It was supposed to be on Heaven and Hell. Have you guys heard that?
Yep.
Yeah. It almost sounded like a cassette recording. Not very good quality. Although Ronnie sounded amazing on it. But what did you guys think of that song?
Well, I know I'm not going to go into it, but I know a lot of the backstory about how and why these things are coming out, including the the demo version of Heaven and Hell that came out. Right. I'm not going to go into all that. But I have heard the song, and obviously the one thing is it really upstages anything that actually is on the reissues of those two albums, because otherwise you're just getting alternate mixes and a 2021 mix and some live material that you didn't hear before and some live material that you did. So obviously these are the kinds of things. And I have a little industry email group, and we were kind of complaining why, Tony is not really realizing that the fans are smart enough to take that kind of material for what it is. And it is so important to put on these reissues that one song, that one release of that onto YouTube is better than anything that is on the reissues, right? Because it is a bona fide, totally different song. And just to comment on the song, you can tell why it wasn't on the album. It's the next step down from Walk Away in terms of sounding like Elf. Right. It doesn't belong on Heaven and Hell because it's too casual and too rock and rollsy and too elfy. And it's too much no, Wishing Well, not Walk Away. It's too much. No, hang on. It is Walk. It almost sounds like a combination of the two, or it's at least in the same realm of those two songs, which are kind of the oddballs on the record that are just a little too acceptable, not Sabbathy enough, right? So
it would have been a throwaway track. What really surprised me on it is, I mean, the quality of this, the recording itself isn't that good, but man, Ronnie doesn't need good quality recording. Ronnie sounds like
he sounds great on it. Yeah.
Like whatever. As soon as I heard his vocal, I'm hearing the guitars and they're kind of, and then he kicks in singing. I'm like, ooh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like a leftover of something that either was leftover from the Elf years or something that they didn't use in Rainbow, patched together with something that wasn't used on Never Say Die or Technical Ecstasy. It's kind of got that kind of, it's definitely not what you heard on Heaven and Hell. I mean, the vibe just isn't there. It's just like this down, dirty, gritty, like just boogie hard rock tune, which is kind of weird, because Sabbath really didn't do much of that type of stuff. But Ronnie sounds splendid on it. Yeah. I agree with Martin 100%. It's like, now that's going to get millions of views on YouTube and everybody's talking about it. Put it on the damn reissue. What's it going to hurt? People are going to hear it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get too into it, but I think there's a really good chance that nobody in the Sabbath camp actually had a copy of it.
Oh, wow.
So they may not have, they may have vaguely remembered that they did it, that they might have completely forgot that they did it, and they may not have even had a copy of it to put on. But then again, we know Tony's sort of opinion is he doesn't like putting that kind of stuff on. Yet there were some pretty funny, embarrassing things on all the older reissues as well, right?
Well, there was
remember that slide guitar thing on, I think it's on Master of Reality, and there's some funny instruments and stuff. So you wonder, right? And then the contrast is that you see a quote from Geezer on it. Geezer's like, oh yeah, funny, oh yeah, we did that one. It sounds like he isn't upset at all.
He doesn't care, but they can't even get it straight who played bass on it.
They don't know who played bass on it.
Like, right. Exactly. Tony, like, I think that Ronnie played the bass on it.
Geezer played, yeah.
Well, I'll just say that because of the way it came out, there's a very good chance now I'm forgetting his first name. Nichols.
Jeff Nichols.
Jeff. There's a very good chance it's Jeff Nichols on bass.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Yeah. Here's another question. Do you guys like Joe Perry's project albums, the Joe Perry project albums?
Take that one.
Yeah, I dig them, especially the first one. I think they're both pretty solid. They got a lot of attention back in the day from the hard rock folks that I hung out with, and they toured all over the place. I like them. I think they're both pretty strong. It's obvious that both entities were trying to do their best before they got back together again. But I don't know that Joe and the band ever had a lot of money to sink into that whole project. And but man, they tried. They released a couple albums, they toured relentlessly, but it never really caught on, unfortunately. But no, those are pretty solid records, I think.
I think the first one's like a well put together masterpiece. I loved it when it first came out. The second one was a fair step down, but it's much more lively and gritty. And then the last one, I have no time for it at all. I didn't like the last one at all. So love the first one, quite like the second one. Definitely don't like the third one.
Yeah, I don't even recall if I've even listened to those records. If I have, it was once, and it was like 30 years ago. I know they had the hit Let the Music Do the Talking, which again they redid for the Done with Mirrors record. So that was, thank God, because it needed it.
Well, and then but Joey kind of did 4 on the floor drumming on that. I hate 4 on the floor, bass drum on 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so he sort of dragged it into the muck and the mire that was done with Mears, and it just really rocks and grooves and just sings on the Joe Perry. The Joe Perry version is infinitely better, I think.
Yeah.
Bengal Gangsters ? Woodford St. Holmes. Are you asking about?
Probably that album.
Yeah, good album.
The second one. I didn't like the first one, but when they did that reunion album, I thought that thing was really good.
I like both of them. I think they're both pretty strong.
Yeah, I didn't like the first one.
Yeah.
Remember that one? That one always went together with Saint Paradise. Remember?
Yeah, I like that too.
Eric Holmes and Denny and Rob. Yeah, those two go to, and Hughes Thrall. Those are the three. The quintet or the trio of these vaguely unsatisfying consortiums, right?
You know what? I like the Hughes Thrall, but I think, man, that could have been so much better. It's still good, but when you think about it, Pat Thrall, Glenn Hughes, that should have been monumental. As it is, it's pretty solid, but it should have been way more than solid.
Yeah.
Hey, let me know if anyone's got any more questions. Throw a bunch of question marks in front of your question. While I'm waiting for some questions to come up, I will mention that I have Martin's link to his website below. Martin, well, you were wrapping up a bunch of books, so tell us about what you have coming out or what you're working on currently, Martin.
Yeah, it's crazy busy right now. So I had this is the big one that came out, this wild, weird expansion explaining the occult origins of World War I, Sandy Pearlman Imaginos saga, expanded and specified, and I did all these illustrations for it throughout as well. So this is a weird book. I won't explain it anymore because it actually is at the site and packing up a lot of those. And then today, don't know what much I'm going to do with this, but this is the paperback version of the first Rush book. Oh. So they're all coming out in paperback. And I don't know how many of my readers in my database need this because most of them got the hardcover. But anyways, a few of these is gone, and it's at a lower price point. So that's probably never going at my website. But I just did a Facebook post on it to, move a few, I suppose, just for kicks. But yeah, the big one is the Flaming Telepaths. Very, very weird book, barely even a music book.
Okay, well, we got a couple more questions here, and then we'll get to you, Pete. Did any of you three see Aerosmith between 75 and 79? I was too young. I did not know.
Yeah, me too.
84 for me. Yeah, I didn't see him.
Yeah, too young and not in a big city. And I don't know when I saw him the first time. It was the 2000s or something, 90s.
Oh, here's a question. Steven Tyler's solo country album. Thoughts, please. I'd never heard it.
I own it, actually.
Thoughts?
I mean, for what it is, it's okay. I mean, it's him trying to do that crossover country thing. It's not bad. I haven't listened to it in probably like 2 years, but I have it. It's all right.
Yeah, I did not like that direction. I mean, if it would have been more of a pure country album, I would have embraced it.
Totally not that. Yeah,
no, it's a new country album, and they even semi crossover into that kind of music on those later Aerosmith albums here and there. So it's a grading direction.
Here's a question I don't think any one of us can answer. Why was Joey Kramer let go? Unless you guys have an inside scoop on that, I don't know.
I don't know. I just remember the story of him getting locked out of rehearsal, right? Like, you can't come in here. You can't come into our playhouse, right? It's just so bizarre, right? But I don't know. I got the impression, wasn't there something about an injury and then we kind of replaced you, and now that you're not injured, you want to come back, and we don't think you're good enough. We like the way it's going now, blah, 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 something like that.
Did you see that performance? What was that? Was that an American Music Awards? What was that? That they were rehearsing for something there. It was a television show, or was it?
I don't remember.
It wasn't the Grammys. No, God, they were a rock band. They can't go on the Grammys. Might have been American. They
always got to have one rock band on the Grammys.
Yeah, right.
Just walk on the wild side for a minute. Right?
The Tolkien rock band. I think it was American Music.
Yeah, it was some show, and then they didn't think that he was capable of playing or something. I don't know why.
I saw the performance. Did you guys see that performance?
No.
Yeah, it was. You didn't miss anything. Okay, let's leave it right there. Yeah. Ask Martin about. Okay. He's asking. You already mentioned this about Joey's towel.
Yeah, that story. I was trying to remember who told me this, but somebody on tour with Aerosmith said, "Oh yeah, they were in really rough shape. They couldn't play. Blah blah blah." It was really sad to see. And he says, I remember seeing once Joey would get tossed a towel and it would be drenched in amyl nitrate. Now I don't know exactly what amyl nitrate does, but it was drenched in amyl nitrate, and he'd rub it all over his face and throw the towel back and keep playing. So that's how he got his stuff delivered on stage live.
That's like Keith Moon taking that horse tranquilizer before the show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. What do you got coming up, Pete?
Coming up, let's see. Well, we got a show airing tomorrow morning that Hack and I are doing right after this one.
Yeah, right.
It is if you guys are Kiss fans, we're doing a Dream Setlist show on Kiss, right? So Hack and I are both going to be putting together our dream set list. If we were in charge, if we were calling the shots, what the dream set list would be. So that'll be airing tomorrow morning. Martin and I are doing a show together, actually a couple shows together on Friday. We're going to be doing the same dream set list thing for Nazareth, as well as another surprise. And then we got Hudson Valley Squares next Monday, and all sorts of other stuff happening over the weekend, doing a Def Leppard show this weekend, and all sorts of fun stuff. So lots happening over on Sea of Tranquility.
Cool. So also below, folks, if you want to help support the channel, I have links to Guitar Hack merch. I've got shirts, I've got hoodies, I've got mugs. I also have hats as well. There's also a PayPal down there, if you'd be so kind. If you do not follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I have those links down there as well. Okay, cool. So I want to thank these two gentlemen. I don't want to keep them any longer since we've done the show twice tonight. I forgot to hit the go live button. So, but believe me, if you're here now, you've seen the entire show because we basically redid the whole thing. So you didn't miss anything. So, yeah, thanks everybody for showing up. Hang on for a minute, guys, and have a great rest of your week. And we will see you soon. All right.
Thanks, everyone.